How's it going? Welcome back to another great video with the majestic host, the Savior. And yes, today we are talking about a new RPG. Now, you might not have heard of this game because it's made by a AA studio, and sadly the only press and the only marketing that we get in the gaming industry is AAA games most of the time. But to be honest, RPGs are kind of coming back finally, which is good. You know, we're getting Avowed later. We're also getting Kingdom Come Deliverance, the second one. We're getting Sky Oblivion, so there's still quite a lot to look forward to in the RPG space. But for people who have played GreedFall, this is the second GreedFall game, GreedFall 2, The Dying World. And today I thought I would just give you my GreedFall 2, The Dying World review based on the early access content and all that stuff. Now, the thing that got me excited about GreedFall 2 and the reason why I wanted to cover GreedFall 2, The Dying World today is because I don't think this game is going to get much attention, much love, and that's kind of sad to me. You know, I do want more games like Baldur's Gate 3, like Avowed. This developer is quite passionate about bringing back that old school experience. I remember playing their older games back when I was a teenager. Let's take a look at some of the things that they've made before. So the developers Spiders have made quite a few games, and I played quite a few of them back in the day because I've always been a massive RPG fan, so you know, any RPG I could get my hands on back in the day was always fun. The first one that I ever played was this one, the Technomancer. And this was like, as you can see, it's got pretty mixed reviews. And that's because, you know, it was ambitious for its time, but it just felt like a little bit lifeless, a little bit hollow. The combat was kind of janky, and although it had interesting ideas, it just felt kind of like a fan-made game. But over time, the developers, Spiders, have got better and better with their work. They always had a unique approach to their world-building design, not so much the actual gameplay elements or the writing. That was all a little bit lackluster, but over time they have built up a good portfolio. For example, something like Bound by Flame was an interesting take on the fantasy genre. It kind of reminded me of the earlier kind of PS2 games, with Prince of Persia, kind of tapping into the light and dark. It was quite an interesting game, and you could definitely feel the inspiration from Dragon Age. So it was kind of mixed overall because, again, it was just kind of lacking that impact that the high quality of the Witcher games would have. And, you know, that's fair enough, they were a smaller studio, but it didn't quite capture that same, you know, detailed world, story, and RPG choices. Over time, they've just built better and better games. They even did a Souls-like, and I think that was kind of positively received, if I'm not mistaken. And then recently, GreedFall, okay? So yeah, Steel Rising, it's a pretty solid Souls-like, 7 out of 10. So they've kind of had a lot of different experiences, from RPG games, from Souls-likes, from kind of Dragon Age type experiences. So it's clear that GreedFall 2 has been a long time coming because it's taken their past experiences and they've learned from their mistakes and they've created truly their most ambitious game yet, I would say. This is actually very much inspired by Dragon Age, and what made me want to cover this, like I said, was because it is being inspired by the original Dragon Age games. Before BioWare went absolutely insane and started drinking too much Slurm,
oh yeah, I'm never going 12 minutes without a slurm again.
The reason I'm covering this game is to give it more exposure, because I think we do need to support RPG experiences, as single-player gaming needs a comeback. It doesn't need to all be live service multiplayer games. In fact, that's kind of destroying the industry. So I do hope you enjoy this GreedFall 2 review, and yeah, let's just get into the positives and negatives of this GreedFall 2 The Dying World review. So the first thing that you'll notice is the combat has been completely changed from the original GreedFall that came out like 4 years ago or something now. And that was, you know, a kind of mixed received game as well, sadly, because it had a lot of great ideas, but it didn't really know how to fulfill them properly. And it was kind of a smaller game, but stretched way too thin, if you ask me, and a lot of other people said the same thing. It just felt kind of bloated to a degree, and it had some cool ideas, but it just didn't have that character world building and RPG choices to make it feel like a proper good RPG, similar to games like Baldur's Gate 3, The Witcher, or Fallout, for example. They've actually listened to feedback, and this is shaping up to be looking more akin to something like Avowed, and you're going to get a lot of different RPG checks, which I really like, which I'll talk about more. So before we get into the positives and negatives, I will simply ask that you do subscribe to the channel. It only takes you 2 seconds of your time, but it would mean so much to me, as I put everything that I am into this channel, passionate about giving you great quality content. When I interact with you guys, it just makes me so happy, and I really do appreciate it. I'm trying to do this full time now, so if you do enjoy this content, consider dropping a small donation or just leaving a like. Any support would mean a lot to me. Checking out my music on Spotify, I just released a new song. But just subscribe if you are new, become a wise one, because this community is great and I'm just passionate about what we do here. So in GreedFall 2, they've opted for a tactical kind of real-time strategy approach to combat, whereas the original GreedFall was much more action focused. You could pause it. It does remind me of the original Dragon Age games, like I said, and that is what they're going for. They took inspiration from Dragon Age. And the cool thing I like about the combat here is basically you'll be switching between roles all the time, switching between characters, and some characters obviously have their strengths. Some might be good at tracking, some might be better at stealth or casting magic, so you will constantly be switching between characters, and it does have that old school vibe to it that does remind me of, you know, similar games like Star Wars The Old Republic, which is quite refreshing, to be honest, when we're just getting a lot of modern day slop. But will it actually fulfill that RPG fantasy? That is the main point of this game. Sadly, the animations here are pretty abysmal. The facial animations are terrible. The voice work is hit or miss. So these are mostly negatives, I would say, which is a shame. But of course, it is coming from a smaller studio. But if you look at something like Banishers of the New Eden, a AA game that came, you know, quite a few months ago now, I think, that was actually, you know, high quality, even though it was coming from a smaller studio. But with GreedFall 2, they went for more scope and ambition, okay? But that is a negative, that the animations and the facial work is just pretty terrible. It makes Bethesda look like high quality. And the thing with the combat, because it is a strategy combat system and, you know, you can pause for combat, the thing is, I wanted to see more detail with the actual attacks, because GreedFall 1 was amazing with the animations and stuff. Here it looks to be quite janky. From the early playtests and everything, it does seem rather janky, and I do understand that it is still in early access, but still, the weapons not really connecting to the people that you're attacking, that's a big no-no if you ask me, and I hope that gets ironed out. But yeah, that does look to be a negative right now. On the flip side, a positive here is, like I said, the RPG choices are actually way better and much more frequent compared to the first game. You can do things like diplomacy, you can even, you know, like sneak and have like a spy check, you know, to gather intel and stuff like that. The same thing with your charisma and all that kind of stuff. So it is proper RPG stuff, and that is something that I've wanted to see for a while. But if the rest of the game doesn't implement combat a little bit better, with feeling a little bit more fluid and just more dynamic. But one thing I do love about combat is the fact that basically you get a lot of choice, because it is a strategy game now and you do have to pause and think and plan. There's so much, you know, different abilities that you can choose from. Each character have their own perk trees, so there's a lot of progression here. There's lots of different abilities, lots of combat moves, which is very old school, but actually that's quite satisfying. Like I said, it does remind me of OG Dragon Age, and when you look at the new Dragon Age and the direction they're going in, I think a lot of people are looking for that experience, and I'm glad it still exists, because not everything has to be, you know, following modern day gaming tropes, which is kind of, yeah, let's just say for modern audiences. I like the fact that there's different ways to approach a quest. Obviously, it's not going to be on the same level as Avowed, but still there are choices here that you can make, and that's very important in an RPG, so that's a big positive, I would say. The next thing is a slight negative, and that is the voice work. Some of the characters just sounded flat and uninteresting to me, but like I said, this is all still early access, so maybe that's going to be patched out. But let's just get into the big negative, okay, and that is the fact that this is a single player experience, guys, okay? This is a single player story-driven RPG. So why the hell is this type of game releasing in early access, okay? I find that to be quite insulting, to be honest, that they're charging pretty much full price for an early access single player game. I mean, we really have to boycott this kind of idea and trope in modern day gaming. Early access is fine for a multiplayer experience, an MMO or something like that, something like a live service game. As much as I don't really like them, they still build onto that foundation. Or survival game, you know, there's so many of them and most of them are terrible, let's be honest. But for a single player experience, I want it to be polished, I want it to be finished. I don't want to pay and play a single player experience and then a few years later it's completely different. That is kind of the trend of modern day gaming and I honestly don't like it. You could argue that even Cyberpunk 2077 was released in early access because it just wasn't finished in time. But actually having that tagline early access for a single player game, I just don't think it's good, and we should not support that type of decision in modern day gaming because it just means that we're paying for experiences that aren't actually finished, and then the industry can get away with a bunch of dirty practices that hurts creativity. The next positive here is the companions have been fleshed out a lot more. I would say now, you know, yes, you can do romance and stuff like that, but they are just a lot more detailed. In the first game, they were rather uninteresting, I would say. Yes, they had backstory lore to them, and that's what's good about GreedFall and the universe, is there's actually deep lore about this world here, not so much individual characters and their depth, but more about the world building and the different factions on offer here. In this one, you are actually playing as a native tribal to the island, not, you know, one of the colonists, okay? So it is a different style here, and it does reflect that in the dialogue and the people that you meet and how they interact with you. That is cool to see, but still it just feels a little bit more fleshed out from what I've seen so far, and that is a positive because the companion system did need work, but it is now kind of up there with, I would say, something like Fallout 4. Nothing amazing, but still quite nice. So if you like the lore from the first one, this is a big positive. They have built upon it a lot more. The world is way more realized, the graphics look a lot nicer, the sound design is tighter, apart from the voice work that is kind of hit or miss. So everything about the first game has just been polished a lot. They were reusing a lot of the same assets, but in GreedFall 2, it does look like they have kind of expanded the scope. Obviously, I've only seen part of the game so far, but it does look to be a lot better compared to the first game. Just, it's going to depend on people's preference of combat if this game is really going to stick the landing. But as a story-driven RPG game, that does seem to be much more, you know, refined. The dialogue tree does seem to be expanded, so there is a lot more choice and consequences. I'm not sure how big those consequences will be in the actual quest, but it does seem to be following proper RPG trends, which is good. So I just wanted to give you a quick GreedFall 2 review because a lot of people might not even know that this exists, and for people who are interested, you know, we need to take a critical look at it now to make sure it's actually worth jumping into, especially as it is early access. So is GreedFall 2 early access worth it? I would say wait. Okay, I would say wait for this to be a polished experience. It does seem promising as of now, but I don't like the idea of it being an early access single player RPG video game. That's something that I never thought I would be saying, you know, like 5 years ago. So yeah, I think there are better options out there later on this year, but if you want to support a more independent studio, a AA game, and they are being creative, I do like the aesthetic, the design of the world, the different factions, and it does seem to be a lot deeper with its storytelling and choices and RPG foundations. That's something that I really do love, and it just looks a lot better overall. Just the combat is going to either take for some people, or some people are just, you know, don't want to deal with that because they're gonna feel like it's dated. But actually that's the point. This is, you know, a kind of callback to old school RPGs, and I think it is doing quite a few interesting things. I just hope they get the pacing right this time around compared to the first game. I do hope you enjoyed this GreedFall 2 The Dying World review. I just thought I had to cover it because I don't think it's going to get much attention, and anything RPG related I have to support because that is the point of video games, is interacting with this media. That's where storytelling and creativity, new ideas, new philosophies, lots of things can emerge if it's done right. The writing has so far seemed pretty mixed, so if they really do give you some dilemmas, some good quality choices, and stuff that actually makes you think, this could be an RPG that you don't want to overlook. But as of now, I would say wait for it. But yeah, so is GreedFall 2 worth it? I would say, you know, that depends on your passion for this type of game. But remember that, you know, this isn't fully polished as of yet, so that's all. So I do hope you enjoyed this GreedFall 2 review, and I'll be seeing you in the next one. I just wanted to make this a quick one, cover it, And yeah, let me know your thoughts and opinions down below in the comments. You guys just mean a lot to me, so just have a fantastic day. Leave me your thoughts down below, give it a like if you did enjoy this video, and subscribe if you are new. Like I said, consider dropping a donation as well, so I can actually keep doing this full time. Thank you so much, guys, and I'll be seeing you in the next video. Have a great day. Bye bye.